The honourable member Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Liberals like to wrap themselves in the Canadian flag and proclaim themselves the great deliverers of health care in our country. Allow me to quote something for you. Oh, it gets better. Let me quote this. The priorities of a Liberal government begin with publicly funded, universally available health care. There is simply no other issue of such vital significance to Canadians. Liberals are proud of their founding role in making Medicare a national priority. Sounds pretty good, eh? Yeah, let's keep going here. The objective of a Liberal government will be to agree with provinces and territories on a national pharmaceutical strategy by 2006. Madam Speaker, I would say that was a fail. That was the former Liberal Prime Minister Paul Martin's 2004 election platform, which he infamously called a fix for a generation. Needless to say, national pharmacare didn't happen in 2006. In fact, we're a full 20 years, a full generation later, and we have a healthcare system that has fallen apart under the current NDP-Liberal government in Ottawa. And having broken our publicly accessible universal primary care system, we now have a Liberal Prime Minister that is setting his eyes on taking a wrecking ball to yet another part of our healthcare system. Why? Well, in this backward town we call Ottawa, where common sense goes to die, Liberal logic says if it isn't broken, then they need to fix it. They need to break it. And what are the NDP Liberals breaking today? It's the systematic dismantling of Canadians' access to their prescription drugs and treatments that are vital to their health. And just like 20 years ago, when that previous Liberal Prime Minister brought disaster after disaster to primary health care, breaking it for a generation, if we follow our current NDP Liberal Prime Minister down this path, our prescription drug system will forever be broken for generations to come. Rather than calling this a fix for a generation, I would say the fix is in. Madam Speaker, it's against this backdrop of our broken primary health care system that Canadians need to take a good, hard look at this legislation. Bill C-64, the so-called Pharmacare bill in front of us today, is not what the NDP or the Liberals are advertising. It is neither the implementation of universal prescription drug coverage, nor will it improve the options for the two items it promises to cover, contraception and diabetes medications. Instead, it goes out of its way to destroy Canadians' already pre-existing insurance coverage, provincial drug plans, and freedom of choice in medication when pursuing treatments. First, let's talk about federal-provincial relations. Madam Speaker, if it is interventionist NDP Liberal governments that use their control over the purse strings to force provinces into impossible decisions on patient care. Every time a premier tries to improve health care in their jurisdiction, the Liberal Prime Minister of the day will threaten to cut off health care funding to the province. Let's say a province wants to establish a few clinics offering MRIs outside of a hospital. To the Liberals, this is a mortal sin, and it cannot be allowed. Just earlier this year, the federal Liberal Minister of Health fined my home province of Saskatchewan $1 million for allowing MRI clinics to operate in 2021. This was an innovative idea that increased the number of MRIs performed at a lower cost. It was brilliant, but not so fast. This NDP Liberal government saw that as a mortal threat and fined the province. As these clinics are still functioning, because they're common sense, we can expect the fines to continue. How ridiculous is that? The answer is as simple as it is sad. They actually don't want the system to get better. They don't want better outcomes for people. The NDP and the Liberals have learned long ago that as long as the healthcare system is broken, they can campaign in elections as the great protectors and saviors of the system. Canadians aren't going to fall for that again. And remember, this whole thing depends on the federal government convincing the provinces to go along with this scheme, something we already know the Liberals are not good at doing. So what about this bill? Isn't it doing something good? Well, there's a second important thing to understand. This so-called Pharmacare legislation will not bring universal prescription drug coverage to Canadians. Section 8.2 of the legislation under the heading Discussions says the following. The Minister must initiate discussions with the aim of continuing to work toward the implementation of national universal pharmacare. So let's break that down. What does the legislation require the Minister to do? He must initiate discussions. Okay, fair enough. What do those discussions do? Well, they have the aim of continuing to work towards a goal. So what? That's it? That's the big reveal? The Minister is required to talk to some people to work towards an ideal. That sounds like every scam artist running a Ponzi scheme. Schmooze as many people as you can, sell them on an idea that is nothing more than smoke and mirrors. And this legislation is literally that, smoke and mirrors, conning Canadians into thinking that there is a pot of prescription drug gold at the end of the rainbow. It's not prescription drug gold at the end of this legislation. In fact, every single Canadian will be just that much poorer if and when this gets implemented. Why? Because it's a direct attack on Canadians' private health insurance and drug coverage. Did you know that according to the Globe and Mail, there are 102 government drug programs operating today, along with 113,000 private insurance programs? Stats Canada reports that 79% of Canadians currently have health insurance which includes drug coverage. The completely independent Parliamentary Budget Officer analyzed how much it would cost Canadian taxpayers if universal Pharmacare was implemented. Their analysis is that Pharmacare would cost about $40 billion every year. And more importantly, that would be about $13 billion more than is being spent today. And keep in mind that Pharmacare would replace existing public and private health drug plans. Generally, private health care plans have better coverage than public ones. That would leave most people worse off. So overnight, 4 out of 5 Canadians will lose the prescription drug coverage they have through their employer, union, school, spouse, parent, or provincial government plan. But who's paying for this? Well, the federal government, which means you and I, through increased taxes. Either way you look at this, this will result in a multi-billion-dollar spending increase paid for by you and I. You know who will really benefit from this? Private companies who provide insurance to their employees. Why? Because today they're paying for private drug insurance. Once this program kicks in, they can now cancel those programs because the government is paying for this now. That will save those companies significant dollars. Essentially a transfer of dollars from the federal government directly to those companies, paid for by you and I. Of course, the NDP-Liberals always love increasing taxes on unsuspecting Canadians. The other thing they love doing is limiting our choices to fit their narrow worldview. There are 2 classes of drugs that the NDP-Liberals choose to cover in this so-called Pharmacare bill: contraception and diabetes medications. Let's talk diabetes. Most people know insulin is a shot given to diabetics to control their blood sugar levels as needed. But do people know that metformin is a prescription diabetes pill that is taken once or twice daily to help the body control its blood sugar properly, reducing the need for insulin? Do people know that metformin is prescribed commonly as a treatment for people before they have diabetes? With a daily treatment of metformin, that person may never develop diabetes. And that daily metformin is a dirt cheap alternative to very expensive insulin. It keeps pre-diabetics from developing the disease and costs pennies compared to insulin. Not covered. What about Ozempic? Oh yes, we've all heard of Ozempic as the wonder weight loss drug, but that's simply a side effect of it being a diabetes drug that acts on the pancreas to control blood sugar. We also know that the best way to avoid type 2 diabetes is to be a healthy weight, not being obese. Ozempic does that. But Ozempic is among the most expensive drugs on the market, about $75 a dose. So Ozempic and metformin are used to prevent the disease of diabetes. Does that mean the NDP-Liberals are purposely going to deny treatment to those folks from developing diabetes and wait until they get the full-blown disease? How is that fair? Shouldn't that be a decision for the patient and the doctor and not some bureaucrat in Ottawa? Innovative Medicines did a comparison of the access of drugs covered by private insurance versus those in public plans. The results are shocking as they are sad. In Canada, private insurance covers twice as many drugs as provincial plans do. The bottom line is that this bill proposes to take away your private drug plan. That's what single payer means. What's the result? Private companies and anyone else currently providing drug coverage in a benefit plan will cancel those plans and force Canadians onto the government plan. Canadians will be stuck with a slimmed-down plan and be forced to pay out of pocket for the rest. Madam Speaker, after 9 years, it's clear that this NDP-Liberal government simply isn't worth the cost to Canadians' health. They've broken our primary health care system, and now with this so-called Pharmacare legislation, they're setting out to break prescription drug coverage for 80% of Canadians who already have private insurance. Conservatives will not stand idly by while the NDP-Liberals systematically break our country. When we form government, we will undertake the task to fix the immense damage this costly coalition has done. We will axe the tax, we'll build the homes, we'll fix the budget, and we'll stop the crime. Let's bring it home.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Parliamentary Government. Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader. There we go. It finally came out.
It's all good. Madam Speaker, you know, it's concerning now. The Conservatives are trying to maybe do a little bit of a backtrack, and they're saying that it's just not good enough. And depending in terms of the depth of the speech you'll find is you will find out that the Conservatives do not support public involvement at the national level, period. End of story. Realize that there's over 3.5 million people with diabetes. There's about 25% of them that are not or that have reported in terms of not taking all the medications that they could or should be taking, and cost is a barrier. You have people with diabetes that will go blind, they will have amputations, all sorts of issues that are out there. Why does the Conservative Party not support Canadians receiving this particular benefit?
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, we need to be very clear on what we're talking about here. We're talking about a system that's proposing to blow up the existing network of private and public health care, Pharmacare programs, of which 80% of Canadians already have coverage, at the expense of putting in a generic plan that everybody will have. And as I said in my speech, many people will actually lose coverage. They will be reduced in what they can get. Now, certainly there are people who aren't covered, and I would agree that there maybe should be something to deal with those people, but not have a single system that comes in and blows up everything to put in a universal single-payer program. That makes no sense, and that's something that I will not support.
Questions et commentaires. L'honorable député de Beauport-Limoilou.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Previously, we have discussed the fact that Quebec has its own Pharmacare plan. Ottawa is refusing. Am I bothering you? Do you need to have a conversation? Can I ask my question now? Order. If there are conversations ongoing, members can go to the lobbies, because I'm sure the Honourable Member would like to hear this question. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Thank you. What I was saying is that in Quebec, we have our own Pharmacare system. It isn't perfect, but we already have it. And our public servants in Quebec are running it. So here is my question. Is it not totally illogical to impose Pharmacare on a province that is already capable of managing its own Pharmacare? Why should Quebecers have to pay taxes so that the Government of Canada can just duplicate existing services in Quebec without necessarily improving service offering?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for that question. It's a great question, and it kind of gets to the core issue, too, of the incompetence of this government in dealing with provincial-federal relations, because we already know that provinces like her province of Quebec and others have said they are not going to sign on to this program because they have their own program or they have different ideas. And so this is also part of the problem, and so you're going to end up with a patchwork system across the country, as has been mentioned before. So I have no confidence that this government can actually pull off the negotiations with different provinces to put in a program like this, let alone the fact that it's not a program worth putting in.
Questions and comments? The Honourable for Winnipeg Centre, a brief question.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, the Conservatives, they seem to fight against anything for women, whether it's menstrual hygiene products, now it's free contraception, including some of their backbenchers that are fighting against the right to access safe, trauma-informed abortion care. My question to the Honourable Member is, why are the Conservatives so anti-feminist and anti-women?
A brief answer, the Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would ask the member a question of my own, which is how you wanted a full, the NDP wanted a full Pharmacare complete program. This is nowhere near that. How can they support this? How can they support this government? And how can they keep propping up this incompetent Liberal government?